Well, good evening, everyone. This is Michael again, and tonight we'll be working on the Soul of Nations and readings from the wonderful little book, The Destiny of the Nations. Just want to say that we will not be able to have a broadcast tomorrow night unless I work out some miraculous arrangement on a train heading back to Helsinki. But we've been up here in the Little Bear Meditation Center, and I hope that one day it may become possible for you to visit it and participate live in our meditations. Now, we did discuss this just a little bit, and I want to review it. And it has to do with It has to do with the names of Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity in the traditional sense. So we all know that Shambhala is the place of will and power, the place where the will of God is known, and there Sanat Kumara presides. It is the planetary head center. And, if we use a little bit of an analogy, we realize how intricate is the head center. It has 12 major petals, for the human being, 12 major golden petals right above the head, and it's considered the major part of the head center. We also have 7 centers within the head, and these are related to Vulcan, and when it comes to the great being, the supercosmic logos, then the great bear takes that place. And then there's the maybe it's 960 petals arranged in different ascending tiers, and DK is not going to tell us exactly all of the intricacy of it. When the psychologist Roberto Assagioli asked him about more information, he says, well, it's a very esoteric matter and it has to remain that way for a while. And there presides the Ancient of Days, and we might say that the highest point in that shambolic center is the logoic plane, where Sanat Kumara presides as the head of the order of Melchizedek. That's another name for him. And St. Paul was involved in helping to make that name prominent. The hierarchy is called the New Jerusalem, not the Holy City like Shambhala, but the New Jerusalem, and there love wisdom presides, and the ruler is the Christ. He is the world's Savior, though his coming will display other functions, because he will be imbued with the will of the Great Triangle, Avatar of Synthesis, Spirit of Peace, and the Buddha. So his new mission will be much greater than his previous mission some 2,000 years ago. And whereas Shambhala brings us the life aspect, here in hierarchy it's group unity. And it's the planetary heart center, not the planetary head center, as is the case with Shambhala. And I wonder if I could I'd like to be able to show you this, but maybe I should have been a little ahead of the game here and found a way to do it. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay. So what I'm going to try to do is seeing if it is allowed to look at the areas of Shambhala and the areas in which the hierarchy is found. And I'll just have to see. I think maybe it may not allow me to do this. No, I think not. I'm not going to be allowed to do this, and I have to solve that problem somehow. It seems that I used to be able to show everything from various books, but not any longer. So one of my computer expert friends, I'm sure, can give a hand, and I'll try one more thing because I'm a little bit stubborn, and see if there's anything that can be done, and the answer is no. Okay. Then we continue and look at humanity, who is called Lucifer. But really, Lucifer is another name for the Agnishvatas, or solar angels, and the majority of human beings will become solar angels and make a great pilgrimage to the star Sirius, where they will be trained in that. So there's kind of I would say, a triangle between Sirius, Venus, and the solar angels, and between Sirius, Venus, solar angels, with that triangle focused in humanity, the prodigal son who has lost his way. And that is the city standing for square. It's a square. It's not a triangle, but one day it will be a triangle, and the throat center is the key. So I think we have some of these names, the planetary throat for humanity, planetary heart for hierarchy, and the spiritual pineal gland and head center for the Shambhalic group in the holy city. And so some various insights come to us when we look at this. I feel like somehow making this just a little bit, I don't know if I'll succeed. You never know sometimes when you try and see how it works. And I'm going to try this, and there we go. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Is it? Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Yes, it is. And then for humanity, I don't necessarily have the right color, but let's see what it looks like if I choose some color. Well, that'll do. The green is just fine. All right. So keep these in mind, Melchizedek, the world savior, and the prodigal son. And some of humanity is located in the Ajna center of Sanat Kumara, and those are that part of humanity which is the new group of world servers. So let's go on a bit. These three centers are closely interrelated. There are triangles between them, and it's one big triangle, and it's supposed to go in all all directions, to and from and to. Closely interrelated and must be thought of in their entirety as expressions of divine livingness. Well, the livingness really is coming from the life aspect focused in Shambhala, but to be complete, the love and the intelligence must be there. Divine livingness as embodying three great stages in the unfoldment of God's plan, and as constituting the three major centers in the body of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Now that is going to be a term that can be applied to many great entities, but for the time being it is our planetary logos, in whom as sort of cells, we live and move and have our being in this great being. Students who have studied as you have, hopefully that's true of all of us, can relate, if they so choose, these three centers to the three solar systems referred to in a treatise on cosmic fire. So in the first solar system, and by the way, I really have to add the word major, don't I? In the first major solar system, because already there have been 5 solar systems. This is the 5th, but 3 of them were not sacred. And we're talking now about the first, let's call it major solar system. The center, which is humanity, was prepared, and the principle of intelligence came into manifestation. I suppose it was a very mental, materialistic solar system, akin to the third ray, and there are even now on the earth certain nomads. It's an interesting name when you look at nomad and monad, okay? Certain nomads who have wandered across a bridge created by Saturn to help them get to the second major solar system in which we find ourselves now. So they have a very, very long history. The beings in that solar system, they were the initiates of the time, and but some of them managed to hold back and not proceed in the proper way. They wanted to hang on to their third-ray intelligence, and they became, to a degree, the black magicians or brothers of the left-hand path in our system. But then there were others still more advanced who went on to Sirius to become solar angels, and then there was a group of more ordinary, they call it the failures of the first solar system, and the very intelligent Jewish group is among those who were transferred to the second solar system, and in the manner of intelligence are far ahead. So anyway, in the second solar system, the hierarchy of love made its appearance. Now that's our solar system. It's the second major solar system, and must eventually come into full manifestation upon the physical plane. We're very close to that now with this process we're engaged in called the externalization of the hierarchy. And when that happens, it will enable the love of God to be seen, and that's what we're really working on these days with respect to our solar logos, I'm going to make another little experiment here. I don't think it's going to work, but why not, Just attempt something here, and maybe I can, if possible, I can get a more direct connection with you. but no, it's not possible. So this is my night when certain things just are not possible. Okay, we'll live with that. And we'll live with that. Now, going on, in the next solar system, now, here, the soul ray of our solar logos is always the second, at least for, if it's a major solar system, it's the second ray. I don't know if, like a human being, only the options 4, 5, 6, and 7 were available for the first, second, and third kind of, let's call it non-major solar systems. I'm not sure about that. It depends on whether the analogy holds, because we all know, well, maybe we think we know, it's very interesting that in the beginning, the monad has a choice of soul rays, which are 4, 5, 6, and 7 only, and in the beginning, a choice of personality rays, which are 4, 5, 6, and 7 only. So, if you have, excuse me, made the transition to a second ray soul, then maybe you began on 4, 5, 6, or 7. But that second ray soul remains true of our solar logos, but probably the first major solar system had a third ray personality. We're told that our particular solar system at this time, the solar logos has not only a second ray soul, but a second ray personality. And probably in the next solar system, which with its emphasis upon will, there will be, I think, a first ray personality for our solar logos. Now, he goes on to say that in the next solar system, the center, which we today call Shambhala, will manifest intelligently and through love the will aspect of deity. I guess we get a little bit of that, but nothing compared to what will come from the solar logos in that next system. We might call it the red system, just the way our present system is the blue system and the one that preceded it the green. It is only, however, in the second solar system, and that's ours, second major, that all these three centers, expressing the three divine aspects, meet simultaneously at various stages of livingness. So that, the second ray is the inclusive ray and brings all of these centers and their energies together. It is interesting to note that it is only through human beings that these centers can ever come into true functioning activity. Maybe those who are beyond the human are just too far beyond the human. They don't need it anymore. And those who are subhuman have not yet achieved. So it's a great thing to be a human being if we can overcome the fourth ray liabilities and the scorpionic, let's call it, liabilities. Because our whole kingdom, in terms of its monad, is ruled by Scorpio, and it's supposed to have a kind of a Buddhic expression, which we have not yet achieved. Little is known of Shambhala except by members of the hierarchy. So when we hear of people waltzing in the door of Shambhala and being on familiar terms with the Lord of the world, whom they affectionately call Sanat, we maybe suspect that there's a little bit of illusion going on and a lot of glamour. So little is known of Shambhala except by members of the hierarchy, to whom that center is the goal, in the same way that the hierarchy is at this time the goal for humanity. That is our goal, and let us not forget it. And it's a very, very lofty goal. We may think, well, it's not Shambhala, but think that the Christ is the head of the hierarchy. So hierarchy is the goal for humanity at this time. Maybe in the next solar system, a more advanced humanity will be spiraling upward toward Shambhala. Shambhala is the directing center for the hierarchy. Well, the hierarchy is the ashram of Sanat Kumara, and will must be expressed through love. That's the major meaning of putting the two centers, Shambhala and hierarchy, together with Shambhala as the director. Little is really known of the will of God, except by those whose function it is to interpret and express that will through love, intelligently applied. The how does it go? The registrants of the purpose and the custodians of the plan. Let's just say that 6th degree initiates pretty well are needed for the kind of thing that's being discussed here. And we know that the Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane anchored for the first time that thin gossamer thread of the will of God upon the earth. And so that's really an amazing idea, that the will of God was made available to humanity really in a concerted manner for the first time because of the efforts of the Christ in the garden some 2,000 years ago. So anyway, these high beings, they know what the immediate purpose is, and their major occupation is the working out of that will into manifestation. Well, at the moment, at that time, Christ was not yet the 6th degree initiate, though he was very close to it, just as the master initiate Jesus was close to establishing himself as a 4th degree initiate. But those who live and work within the precincts of Shambhala and thereby have chosen the path of earth service, they do know the will of God, and they know that unless it is lovingly and intelligently applied, and very cautiously too, it will be a menace to the form of man, the forms through which he develops. It's so, easy on the path of occultism to destroy the very form through which one is supposed to evolve. We have therefore 3 great centers, and from them emanate 3 types of energy, which are taking form as the 3 governing ideologies of the consciousness of the race. Maybe he'll deal with that here. Old ideologies still persist. Subsidiary schools of thought are everywhere to be found. Distorted interpretations and travesties of reality abound on every hand. On all sides, the dead level of the people, the ignorant masses, ruled particularly by the lower part of Cancer, is played upon by these energies, and men become victims of the exponents of the ideologies past, present, and future. So basically, these ideologies, maybe we've been told or have read it, are monarchy, representing Shambhala, democracy, representing hierarchy, so it's, in a way it's good enough for us right now. And then I suppose some type of socialism or communism, something of that nature, which is the invention of humanity. Forget not that behind all of them, all of these ideologies, stands He whom we call the Lord of the world. When all these temporary experiments have been tried, and when humanity has been led in its consciousness from one stage of understanding to another, and of recognized interrelation, the kingdom of God will be established upon earth, and the ruler of the earth will then work through the hierarchy to produce that synthetic, living, creative response from nature, of which humanity is a part, which will enable each kingdom fully to reveal the glory of God. It's a very beautiful prognostication. Sometimes I think about that American primitive painting, called the Peaceable Kingdom, where the lion is lying down with the lamb, and there is no violence and bloodshed. So that is an extraordinary possibility, and one day it will work out, but we have to prepare for it in the proper manner. And of course, whatever a nation is to you or to me, these are the great groupings, according to Ray and astrology, through which these higher possibilities of right human relations, right interrelations, are working out. So we want to contribute to that, and really in a conscious way. Shambhala will work through the hierarchy, he says, and the hierarchy in its turn will reach the various kingdoms in nature through the medium of humanity. Now, isn't that interesting? We've had such, in the domestication of animals, some amazing things. I mean, you've got these dogs that can talk, basically. And you have a wonderful flourishing of certain plant species. And you have also the radiance of the mineral kingdom. Now, all of this is not just humanity at work. This is hierarchy working through the medium it's hierarchy working through the medium of humanity. So working in that way, which will then enter into its preordained and destined function, which means that the archetype or archetypes conceived in the mind of God, our planetary logos, assisted by the fourth chain lord and the fourth globe lord, will in fact work out in full beauty and will reflect the divine intention, the divine ideation, held together on various planes, the monadic plane being one, the logoic plane being another, and even higher. The time of fruition, I guess that's, for so many of us and for the kingdoms, the time of fruition lies relatively far ahead, but in the meantime, humanity is experimenting with the subject, or is the subject of experiment. We are experimenting and the subject of experiment. It is exploiting and being exploited by lower and higher forces. It is learning the lessons of enforced obedience to the dangers of selfish license. It's not like anything that the little ego deems desirable is really allowed or sanctioned. So many of those things are not. Humanity, it is victimized by powerful personalities in every land, and this without exception. Or it is being guided in right directions, and again, without exception, by the emissaries and disciples of either Shambhala and hierarchy. It's so easy to think of certain preeminent countries as the most evolved and the most morally and spiritually developed, but it's not necessarily so at all. There are disciples of the Christ, by whatever name they would call him, in all of these countries. All vaunted freedom or vaunted control is but the temporary reaction of a humanity which is swept by ideas, controlled by ideals, and impulsed by selfishness, impregnated by hates, and yet all the time is struggling to express the higher and better qualities and to free itself from the thraldom. You know, when you see thraldom, it means imprisonment. Free itself from the thraldom of ancient evil, the slavery of ancient codes, and the curse of ancient habits of thought and living. Well, I think that's worth really calling attention to, because, you know, we're not yet free on this planet. We are not yet free on this planet. And I'd like to, let's see, what have we got there? New, I wonder if it's possible to, yeah, maybe. Okay, apply. Maybe the seventh ray, whose nature is very near this color that I'm using here, will help us in its Uranian aspect to gain the kind of freedom we need and escape from the thraldom. I mean, the state of our society tells us that the word glamour and enthralling have a positive connotation to so many people. You know, when you tell somebody they look enthralling, you're saying they look captivating, and you're the captive. And you know, the same is true. Oh, how glamorous you look, meaning, you know, you are misleading in your radiation when other people come near you and you lead them astray. We have to turn things around so there's a better interpretation. It is what is happening behind the scenes to mankind as a whole, which is of moment. Now, so many people are becoming separative, you know, they really are, and or at least the license to be separative is emerging. And that, of course, in the next 5 or 6 years, hopefully, will be overcome. It is the unfoldment of the human consciousness which counts with the hierarchy. So it's power for Shambhala, consciousness for hierarchy, and intelligence for humanity. Okay, so it's unfoldment of human consciousness, and hopefully in our studies of this nature, our consciousness has been unfolding. And how would we know? Well, just compare what you know now to what you thought you knew then. And that unfolds in response to the presented conditions in any country or countries. There are so many abuses in various countries, but they're all trying to move forward, and oftentimes the leaders get in the way, but in general, the soul of humanity is sound. Let me assure you that under the pressure of modern life, under the strain of the imposed present conditions and civilization, plus the mental concern, the terror of the marching armies, the thunder of the many voices, and the stress of the worldwide economic stringency, the human consciousness is rapidly awakening from its long sleep. So, you know, as was said by Master Moria, the worse the better, if you can believe it. So the greater the stress to which we are subjected, and DK has named a number of them, the more likely we are to wake up, you know, because there's been many sleepy souls, and I'm sure we've all gone through the sleepy soul stage. that great and fundamental reality which you call the human state of mind is just beginning to focus itself upon things which matter and to express itself in a living fashion. So humanity, the laggard, right? It took us 3 million years to awaken to the fact that we had been individualized, at least on this particular planet. So this is the factor of moment and not the happenings in any particular country. Well, I think that'll be enough for right now. Once I get reading here, and maybe once you start concentrating on what is being read, you might want to continue. And I would say keep this as a good reference book, because somehow it deals with the greater wholes and with the political system or systems which affect so very many. So this is going to be the end. I'll make a note here. End of Souls of Nations reading and meditation. And it's 24 August, and we'll be meeting again, I guess towards the 31st. If it ever becomes impossible to meet you due to various travels and things, well, we'll, do our best to let you know. So normally in a webinar we would discuss some of all this, but this is a broadcast, and it is basically, a meditation. Somehow, DK has such a wonderful view of human life. At one point he said, I could, or you might think I could, or I could become discouraged did I not love humanity so much. And for me, I found that to be a very arresting thought, that, it's pretty slow. If you're working on the inside of nature, esoterically, the outer response might be very slow. And he says you really have to learn to get used to that, because one day you'll be out of the body, and one day you'll be trying to work with those who are in the body, and they just don't respond. And you can't allow yourself to become discouraged. And so, as he said, I could become discouraged, except that I love humanity so much. So the warmth of that outgoing second ray love is what is sustaining him and many other workers who meet with difficult situations. If you ever want to read about difficult situations and a becoming initiate of the 4th degree, read about Father Damien, who served the people who had contracted leprosy on Molokai Island in the Hawaiian Islands, and basically he, gave up a very, for the church, I suppose, a quite comfortable position in order to serve, the least of the people. There was no cure for leprosy at the time, and no amelioration, and people were in the most dire straits. And Father Damien himself, after years of service, contracted the disease and died of the disease. But, with that kind of sacrifice that he made, he was a Capricorn, okay? So obviously, in this case, an initiate. And he had Taurus rising, which introduces us to the great light in his case. And there he is on the island that first night, and just wondering if he's just given up his whole life and feeling remorse and grief and all that, but he came to and immeasurably helped the lives of these wretched people. I mean, really, when you think about leprosy, all the way back into biblical times, and maybe how we can treat it now, but how it wasn't treated then, and the shunning of the leper and castigation, being cast out and so forth, and as if filled with demons and all the rest. You just realize what he took on for himself. But that is the nature of the fourth degree. One takes on something of extreme difficulty, just as the Master or Initiate Jesus did. Interesting that the Tibetan should mention them in the same breath. The Master Jesus, he said, the death of a master, of an initiate Jesus or of a Father Damien are a very different matter than the death of a Hitler. So here's our Tibetan teacher with an immense grasp of what is relevant to humanity, and we have the opportunity to learn from him about the things that really matter. Now, we will come back to doing the countries, and it just, takes hours and hours to prepare such a presentation, so those hours are not available right now. But we will come back to that until I think we've managed to tell a little bit about all some 200 countries. The countries have, proliferated in that amazing manner. But right now, the idea is a bit more to serve the great Lord in our nation. He works with the soul of nations, as do certain high devas that are under his care and under his sway. And so we think for a moment, and as it were, join him, we join him. He's on this planet. He's real. And he exists on a number of planes simultaneously. And he seeks cooperators, and we seek to cooperate with him. And so we say, meaning it, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. And he has said that wherever two or more are gathered in his name, there he will be. Such is his amazing power of pervasion. He has that great ability. I think, we have to become citizens of the world, not just of our own state or province or community. but of our nation as a representative of the soul of the planetary logos. We have a responsibility. Each nation will have its own esoteric school. Maybe it starts out with something like 7 or 14, and it'll take some hundreds of years to establish them. But every nation that has developed to a certain point will have its own esoteric school, and that depends upon the nature of the causal body of that nation, the nature of the egoic lotus of that nation, to which we are contributing when we build our own egoic lotus. So you can say, well, I don't know how I was born in this nation, or how I was moved to it, but there's some kind of wisdom behind all that. And you have an esoteric responsibility to the nation in which you find yourself. Or maybe some of us are, citizens of the world, or what they say, world disciples, and in a way our nation is the entirety of humanity, but in general we hearken from a certain place, and that place has qualities, and the qualities come out as mottos that we've been working with just a little bit here. And if I were to look at this, maybe I could find something of interest. Okay, I know, there it is. There's the map of it, and we've talked about some of these great nations. With India, if I can find it again. Okay. It has Darjeeling, through which a very pure form of the first-ray force passes, even though the city itself is ruled by the second and the fifth rays. So what's the light, that's being hidden here? And I suspect it's the great light of reality. At first the light of Shambhala, let us say, and there is let's just say that Shambhala is the place of unfettered enlightenment. We've been much influenced by the wisdom of India, the Vedas, the Brahmanistic religions. It's been a great repository of wisdom for us. And so many people that are working in the esoteric field look to their roots in India, and maybe in India those roots were established from Atlantis and even Lemuria in ancient times. I hide the light. Why hide the light? And I would just say, well, we're not all ready for the light. Shambhala is the power that touches and then withdraws. You rarely leave your finger in an electrical socket, do you? So Shambhala has to be very careful about how much energy it gives. We'll try to come to these every time when we think of our own nation, because certain nations are very inspiring. Let's just say, or centers anyway, the Darjeeling and India combination is extremely inspiring if we try to overlook the degradation which has been the lot of hundreds of millions of people, but India will rise again. So, it may be that you are from one of these nations or under the influence of a planetary center related to a nation. You may not live in Switzerland, but you may well be under the influence of Geneva. And I guess I don't see that here, but it is important. And elsewhere, the discussion is there. So think about your nation. Your responsibility is ongoing. It may be, that you don't know the rays of your nation. Here I am offering this to you from Finland. And here's a picture, or at least a tabulation in which Finland has the Capricorn, Sirius, initiatory soul, and the powerful Aries, first ray personality, it appears. So there are a number of nations here that just don't yet have assigned to them the rays. Of course, DK knows the trends, but for whatever reason, he decides that we will not yet discuss what the rays are. Maybe they're in process of transition. He did say that does happen. So let's think about your nation. And let's think about the degree to which it is expressing the soul or the personality. I mean, every nation at this stage of development expresses both. Now we know how important it is for a nation to grow into that stature where it can express its soul, just as it is for a human being. We don't want to be forever simply expressing one of the vehicles. We don't want to forever simply express the personality, which tends to be selfish. We human beings want to express ourselves as souls. And thus it is for every nation. So visualize for a moment the egoic lotus of your nation. There are very few initiate nations. You would almost go out of your way to try to find such a nation. Maybe there are a few nations which are on the border of having initiate status. But think about the way your nation is moving forward, and just as you are, contributing to the beauty, the color, the radiation, the sound of your egoic lotus, so it is with the various nations and the people that are involved in contributing quality, soul quality to those nations. So where does your nation stand then, in terms of expressing soul quality? What does your nation really need, and are you in a position, even in a small sense, to offer something that will help to fulfill that need on whatever level the need may be occurring? See, what is it you're really giving to your nation? I think we can think of these terms, to make its causal body, its egoic lotus, shine more beautifully with the qualities which must be developed. What are you really giving? You know, we want to be in the position where we can be assured that at least we're giving something. And I think as we build in quality in our own causal body, inevitably this will be transferred just a little, you know, maybe even kind of like a microscopic amount to the egoic body, egoic lotus of our nation. I mean, look at what Lincoln did for the United States. It's indelible what he did. He wasn't a perfect human being, but he had great principle and great compassion and great sacrifice. And those things in here, in the higher psyche of the United States to this day, because of the action of that particular racial avatar. Now, you know, there are others who don't really give to the soul, they kind of give to the personality nature. And maybe, you know, we look at Hitler, Mussolini, von Bismarck, we see that it's not so easy to be a true donor to the highest qualities of your nation. But the soul, of course, accepts only what is good. So however little we have, however little, when we build our own soul, we're building the soul of our nation. And then we make it possible for hierarchy to function in our nation. I see something here. I want to answer it. You see Scandinavia there? The Scandinavian countries are considered to be Iceland, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. Finland is in a different category, and we see Libra as the soul, and we see Cancer as the personality. Now, I would say in all of these countries, the seventh ray is very important and maybe rules as the soul ray. You know, the people who live in Denmark, I think they will have to apply their thought very carefully. I was always impressed by going to the castle. I guess it's kind of like Hamlet's castle. I forget the name of the city. And there is this sculpture of Holger the Dane. And he rests until Denmark is really threatened. And then he rises. Denmark has a lot of independence. And I think a lot of the Aries energy and a lot of the first ray as well. And pretty powerful, some of the Danes have told me. But overall, you know, they're countries for the new age. And the seventh ray is very important from a soul perspective. But that's something we really have to think about, isn't it? I think so. And those rays will consolidate as we go. But the seventh ray is extremely important in the Scandinavian countries, and hence their contribution to the new age. And different astrological signs are there, and I do remember that Aries is pretty important when it comes to Denmark. I remember that much. Even though all four are ruled by Libra and Cancer, you know, the peacemakers in the world. We don't have the Norseman syndrome anymore. Nobody's raiding other countries. It's changed dramatically. So anyway, friends, think about your nation and what you can give as you develop your own causal nature. Think about that. These many nations, of course, they all tell a story. And then down here you see the Scandinavian countries. They all tell a story, and we have a larger responsibility than we may know. So think individually, think in terms of your group, your community, your nation, and humanity, and of course the various kingdoms of nature, and think in terms of the planet. The spheres keep increasing, and our responsibility continues to increase. You have to realize that for such a being as the Christ, it's a tremendous responsibility in a planetary sense. So let us sound the great invocation together. And then please remember that tomorrow I don't think Tui and I can give our usual broadcasts because of the travel, and if you've ever tried the frustration of a train ride where you're trying to send out some kind of program, well, you know what it's like. And here today there's no storm as there was yesterday, so hopefully the intermittency, which unfortunately was there last night at some points, I hope that's been overcome for the moment. The sun is shining. Okay, the great invocation, everybody. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Well, thank you, friends, for gathering with us here tonight. A few of us, and this will be available on Makara, and probably already available on YouTube. And feel free to recommend it to others. We've got to begin thinking in broader terms and realizing our responsibility is not only to ourselves, but to the larger groups in which we find ourselves participating. So, as I said, if for some strange reason we are able to do a broadcast from a moving train, we'll do it, but sorry, but I wouldn't count on it, okay? Wouldn't count on it. Next week we have the morning schedule, and we usually resume on Wednesdays, and there'll be the Triangles broadcast on Wednesday morning, and the Science of Triangles webinar on Wednesday evening. So lots of love and many blessings from Tuya and myself, and from all the people that we're working with to try to bring the ageless wisdom in ever greater depth to all those who may be interested, and I'm sure we all are, So, okay, so lots of love and many blessings. Yeah. And we'll be, yeah, that's it. Holger Danske Kronborg, yeah. Yeah, it's an impressive statue, the latent period. And I must say that Denmark is really insisting now, rightfully, I believe, on its rights with respect to its own culture. and resisting being looked down upon by other groups that don't see widely. Okay, so we'll be talking to you, and thank you so much. The esoteric schools in Scandinavia, Sweden, coming along, the preparatory school. And then, of course, we've done a lot of work in Denmark, and there will be, of course, in Norway, and Iceland has a small population. It's hard to say. But every developed nation one day will have its own esoteric school after these 7 and 7 are developed. Okay. So here we go. And all the best to everybody.